Welcome into Head on a Swivel. It's a Monday night post UGA victory over Texas Longhorns in Sanford Stadium in the classic city of Athens. I'm Chris and he's Scott, and we're Head on a Swivel tonight. Hope you stay around for the entire show because we've got a lot of things to talk about. We're definitely excited about our Georgia Bulldogs and what they brought to the table on Saturday as well. And you've got a loaded show to watch tonight, so please stick around. Stay tuned.
Georgia Sports Autographs is built by collectors for collectors. They know what fans want because they've been in your shoes, hunting for that perfect piece, the right signature, in the right spot. At every signing, Georgia Sports Autographs make sure it's done right, using the proper ink, following best practices, and paying attention to every detail so you end up with a product you'll be proud to display. They've already worked with many of Georgia's top athletes, and their network gives them access to just about anything you can imagine. If you don't see it listed, don't assume it can't be done. Chances are they can get it for you. Georgia Sports Autograph tests themselves with every event, always improving, always delivering for the ultimate addition to your collection. Trust the team that treats every autograph like its own. Georgia Sports Autographs, where every signature tells a story.
We'd like to welcome you in to Coach Hayes Huddle. I'm Chris, he's Scott, and we're going to talk to you tonight about all the things reactionary from the Georgia-Texas game from Saturday. We apologize we weren't able to get to you, and that's really my fault. My phone went dead while we were at the game on Saturday. We couldn't do a rapid reaction show, but I wanted to be able to basically take all of that and embed it in, and let's just sort of get it all out at this point in juncture. Before we begin, though, a lot of you know that are interested in the X's and O's of what we do. Scott does a great job of analyzing, and as always, I love to break down the X's and O's of the game, obviously bringing a lot of mentality of the breakdowns of the plays, and I would really love for you to join the Patreon. Most of you know through my social media outlets, I produce a lot of tape. I produce a lot of breakdown on tape, but if you want the extensive breakdowns that I do, please think about joining the Patreon. You can become an exclusive member of my Patreon and have the opportunity to see over 2 hours worth of offensive and defensive breakdown X's O's during the week, as well as the fact even after the season's over with, recruiting analysis, player analysis, talking about the depth chart, looking at all those things in the offseason that you want to know, and all the ins and outs of what's going on with University of Georgia and all around the SEC for that matter, in the umbrella. So just want you to make sure that if you get a chance, check out the Patreon. The QR code is on the screen. All you got to do is scan that. It takes you to your social medias that I produce, and I want you to have the opportunity to check that out. Scott, as you have had a chance now, because we didn't get a chance to talk on Saturday because, like I said, very busy day on Saturday. It was obviously a lot of excitement. A lot of things came to fruition that you and I had kind of previously mentioned from the previous week. So what I wanted to do is, since we didn't get a chance to do the actual, rapid reaction on Saturday, I wanted to kind of get your feel of what you felt immediately after the game versus now away. You've had your time to lay your head on the pillow and kind of digest it and absorb it. What are you thinking now about, waking up on Monday with Georgia with the 35-10 victory over Texas from Saturday?
It's a real statement. I think one thing about the 12-team playoffs and such a larger sample size you need of games is don't start too fast and peak at the right time. The thing that really impressed me, though, was just the raw physicality that Georgia played with, and it was such a contrast between Texas, who may not be one-to-one with the talent that Georgia has, but it's really close. I mean, they recruit the same players. They obviously, through NIL deals or however they're winning some of those recruiting battles in July, they're winning, one or two critical battles that Georgia would like to win. So the talent's close enough that you would think, hey, look, this is going to be, how has Vegas called it, a 3.5 to 5.5 game. It's going to be back and forth, but Georgia came out and absolutely dominated in terms of relentless physicality and relentless aggression. And I don't think people appreciate how impressive that is because it can't be measured in metrics. It can only be done with the eye test. And Jones absolutely went for a WWE body slam. Little things like that really set the tone and kind of echo out and trickle down to all the players, and everyone feeds off of that. Yes. And where Georgia's getting really, really scary at the right time is they're making those critical plays earlier. For example, in Auburn, the double punch or the fumble that kind of reset everything, and then Georgia viewed it as 0-0 and then started getting after them. Halftime adjustments helped with that. But now Georgia's starting relatively fast offensively. Yeah, they did have a lull in the second quarter, but you could tell Georgia was just so close to breaking something. And Texas was really gambling. A lot of run support, safeties flying upfield, and that seems to be the way defenses want to play this Mike Bobo offense. And with all that being said, for the first time, this is an offensive-led team by Kirby. But what makes it so impressive is just the overall mentality of this team. It's a lot of, oh, the Rocky Balboa, they'll take your punches and give them back. I think they're more like a Mike Tyson or a Hagler. They want war. They're okay with a war. In fact, that's their whole desire in the game, is to drag you into the deep end of the pool and truly find out if you are who you say you are. And I think Georgia reminded Texas of that in a big way. And that's such a massive difference between Georgia and really everyone else in the SEC not named Alabama. And even then, I think Alabama fans would say, look, we've kind of traded some physicality for not necessarily finesse, but being really technically sound. Georgia just likes beating people up. And they do it so often. And every year we just forget for a little bit, just for a little bit. And then Kirby likes to have one of these games and really remind us by actually pursuing an absolute beatdown, because Kirby's a conventional conservative coach 90% of the time, but when he wants to make a statement, he makes it. I mean, the TCU game absolutely showcasing it. The Texas game last year in Austin, this year in Athens. And guys, I'm not going to say Georgia has peaked. I'm going to say Georgia is peaking. It appears 3 times the charm. You go into Atlanta in that neutral site against Georgia Tech and do something like this. Look, I think Fowler's 100% right. If Georgia continues to do this, the guys are getting into that flow state mentally, this is a real problem, because personnel on defense is changing. Guys are getting a little healthier, and you see how that's kind of shifted the dynamic of how they can do things at corner. But where I was really impressed is, and I know Kirby would say, hey, look, don't give the defensive line too much credit. Those young guys aren't young anymore.
Nope.
I think they're playing an outstanding relentless. They're being really good in their pursuit. They're breaking down the pocket to that perfect horseshoe and squeezing it down so your rush lanes are maintained. But at the same time, you're telling the quarterback, okay, you're going to have to step up in the trash, and you're going to have to be just too darn good we can't stop you. And a lot of quarterbacks have that. I mean, Ty Simpson actually had a bit of a falter game last week. The safety play from Oklahoma was really good. There were some interceptions. So those games can happen. But where Georgia's really getting into a unique and special circumstance is they actually have the ability week in, week out to test the opponent they're playing. And for all argument's sake, Arch played pretty well, and you still get your butt whooped like that. I thought it was really, really impressive.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see through the way I witnessed the game was that Sark and Texas had heard about Georgia's running game, and they were going to try to match that physicality in the trenches. You could tell they were bringing extra guys in the box. Colin Simmons was doing exactly what I thought we were going to be seeing him, where he was playing a little freelance and really had a pretty good game. I was really surprised to begin with. We had one play in the first series where Gunner has to pull off the zone read because Colin comes down and tries to take the zone back and has a big explosive run, which is what has been just such a nice byproduct of what's been going on with our run game and him adding to the run dimension of what we do dynamically in the backfield. And then our next explosive run is the very first play in the second series where we have a 9-yard gain off of a gap scheme where, man, Bobo is absolutely doing so many things right now to be able to run the same type plays but running it out of multiple formations and really screwing with Texas's edge. We talked about Texas giving us all the eye sweats from all the pre-snap motions, but realistically what I love is that Bobo, in the sense, is doing the same thing. He's got a lot of shifts, prior shifts that moves, changes strengths. It changes you into the boundary versus to the field. And all of a sudden you're having to switch safeties, you're having to switch backers. And now you're putting your guys in conflict right before the ball snap. And that was evident on the 4th and 1 play where we convert, which, how is is it not just an insane thought process for your coach to have that much confidence in your offensive coordinator and the staff? He said it in the pressers. I can't give, I want to talk about Coach Bobo and Coach Searles and other coaches later. I definitely want your thoughts on that as well. But I just really thought once they got into the water, as you call it, taking them out to the deep waters, Coach Smart mentioned the fact of how Navy SEALs, you want to get down and get in that water, and all of a sudden when you finally lay down in the sand and you're having to take all that on, are you really ready for that smoke? Are you ready for that heat? And they were not. After a period of time, you could just tell, even when it got back to 14-10, it was almost like Georgia sort of, in a sense, was like, okay, they've made it a game now. Now we got to put them out of their misery. Now let's really drag them out into the water. And that's what I saw from that perspective. And what you mentioned really correlates with that. I want to hit something right here that Chris Fowler had mentioned. You could tell he's in his hotel room. This is right after the game. So he's having sort of his rapid reaction process. I want you to hear this. And of course, it's a lot of fluff for Georgia, but there's something that he mentions in this statement right here to me that is more important than just the fluff about what Georgia is doing, what they're incorporating. So here's this real quick.
That no one is going to want to see in the postseason. You don't want to see Georgia across from you when that CFP bracket comes out, because they are hitting their stride and beginning to play better and better on offense. And Mike Bobo, shout out to the play caller for Georgia, the former quarterback who's had 3 different stints as an assistant at Georgia, and is one of the most underrated guys. Nobody ever thinks about Bobo, and they talk about the top play callers, the top offensive minds in the sport. He's kind of a low-key guy, and what he does in constructing plays and a game plan isn't necessarily the flashiest, craziest stuff, but the way they use personnel groupings, the way they use tight ends in formations, 12 and even 13 personnel, and some of the problems and stresses that creates on the defense. Texas was completely confused the first couple of Georgia touchdown drives. They were trying to get lined up. Credit Mike Bobo, man. He got fired up on our booth camp today, and he should be fired up. His kid Drew's playing center there. He's calling a brilliant game consistently for Georgia. And, the Dawgs are nasty. Probably won't even be in the SEC championship game as defending conference champions.
As Chris is mentioning, I think everything plugs in, just like you said, Scott. The continuity, the consistency, what we're beginning to see. You're beginning to see the ability of peaking that you mentioned a while ago that I think is very important, that we don't say that there's peak. There's no past tense to that right now. But there's one thing that Chris says about Coach Bobo's offense that I find to be kind of, believe it or not, I take it a little offensive, because I don't understand in today's world, 2025, the pads are smaller on these kids. They seem to get hurt so much more easier. I know they want to be able to move around and freelance. They don't put mouthpieces in their mouth for some odd reason. It seems to hang off their helmet more than it's actually in their mouth. I don't get that. Don't understand that, because that's just completely against my way of thinking. But I'm going to tell you this. He talked about the 12 and 13 personnel stuff being non-sexy, because why has it all of a sudden become to the point where we actually have, we're 10 personnel, 11 personnel, where you have 2x2 sets with one back in the backfield in gun, and you've got to be able to throw it all over the map in order to be a sexy offense. I find that to be highly offensive. Honestly, that's something, and nothing against what Fowler is saying right there. I think a lot of the things he hit are spot on, obviously, because we as Georgia fans feel that way, but it's not just us. It's everybody on the outside looking in feeling the same way as well. And here's what I think. I think the 12 and 13 personnel is sexy, because here are the things that you can still do when you're in 12 personnel, especially when you have 2 tight ends that are as athletic as the tight ends that we have had, along with 2 receivers and 1 back. You not only can keep 6 and 7 guys in to run play action RPO with 3 receiver game, you can still do all those things that set up the run game as well, because now you've got 6, possibly even 7 in the box blocking. Just for example, like I told you a while ago on the Bowens gap scheme, or we bring Delp across, we've already got a tight end and Elias Williams in the actual set. We're in true 12 personnel, and we run just a gap scheme play, and we run it a little differently. I have that broken down. Actually looking forward to putting that as part of my Patreon breakdown for the offensive set. But all of a sudden out of that as well, you can bring that motion or have that motion after the snap, and all of a sudden you can have 4 guys release, you could have 3 guys release, you can leave the protection how you want, slide the protection, and all of a sudden you still got an explosive down the field like they have to Noah Thomas on his first touchdown. So I don't find being in 12 and 13 personnel to be non-sexy. I think, honestly, that's what makes Georgia who they are. I think that's the reason why the offense is beginning to click the way it is, and why we're beginning to see the offense of Mike Bobo with athletes that he has out there, the consistencies that have been brought back due to the assistant coaches working with those offensive guys, from the fact of Hartley with the tight ends, from the fact of having Coley with the wide receivers, with Bobo with the quarterbacks, and you got Coach Crawford with the running backs, and Coach Searles with the offensive line. I just think there's that nice little gel that's happening because you're getting everybody growing up simultaneously at the same time, and we're beginning to see that product on the field now, and it's exciting to see. Scott Green, what do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think what made Todd Monken so great is he didn't ask too much in terms of we're going to do a lot of flash and flare. It was a lot of pre-snap motion to make it easy on the quarterback, man, zone, all that stuff. But it's really breaking tendencies down into, it's not an easy binary. So defenses, guys, they're sitting there trying to analyze, all right, down distance, where am I at? Do I think it's a run out of this look? What do they do out of this look? Is it a run or pass? Where Bobo and Monken, because I mean, they've been so similar in a lot of their concepts that they're trying to draw out. They're making you pick between multiple poisons. And what I mean by that is, look, oh, they're in 12 personnel. They can leverage me here. They're thinking about, they tend to do this. Well, guess what? We can tend to do anything.
Yep.
That's the thing that makes it so great for these formations.
Wingo.
It makes it really, really easy for the offense to be successful if they just do the basic things right. And guys, that's not easy to do and execute at the level Georgia's offense is doing. I mean, the tight ends were bullying people for the first half of the season, but they weren't really getting a lot of targets their way. But they still kept being relentless. They bullied people on the outside, and now you see them getting phased in. And obviously, that's a testament to two things. The offensive line is getting better. That makes Gunner trust them. And Gunner's obviously getting better at layering the football. And that makes it even so much more dangerous because the receivers have clearly stepped up to a whole nother level. Much cleaner in the routes. They're on the same page. They catch the football more often than not. They really have some dynamic athletes out there. It makes it really difficult when they're on islands. The defense is on islands against them. Well, now you phase into a crop of tight ends that are not only just really physically bullying and imposing, they can run. These are athletes that love to catch the ball, but they will love just as much to put their face mask right in the middle of your chest plate and take you for a ride. And that's the thing about a defense that faces this Georgia offense is, okay, now I know they can run really well, they can pass really well, and they can do it out of any look. And I think that 4th and 1 was a great example of what makes Georgia's offense so dangerous. So you fake the dive, then you throw it to Bowens, and you just saw how smooth everything looked out of it because, like you said, Texas was heel lining and screaming in that backfield as fast as they could. And that adds a lot of pressure on the quarterback and everyone else to get things right, to do things right, because that window of time is so short. But then add into it, Bobo's adding a plethora of weapons over here, and he's doing it out of so many different looks. You're now sitting there scratching your head saying, it's not even worth me gambling on any tendency because if I do, I'm going to lose more often than not.
I love what you're saying in that concept because, you know, it's just like on the 4th and 1 play. And we could talk about, you know, 5 or 6 pivotal plays that were part of that game. But a lot of people don't realize, too, that we've run that play now 4 times from a running perspective where we've given it to McCray on the dive, and we've tried to run the boot out of it 3 or 4 times. In fact, when I first saw it, I knew there was a boot action off of it because Gunner carried it out off the play to McCray when we got the first down in the 4th and critical situation where we gave it to McCray. The time we ran it against Mississippi State, it got held up because they took Bowens out of the backfield. But what made that play to me so special is what we talked about a while ago. It was the pre-snap alignment where we moved a tackle over uneligible, and we moved from gun pistol down underneath center, and then we moved the tackle over, and everybody's trying to adjust the alignment to the strength that they get lost in translation because when he reverses out, it looks like he's going to hand it to McCray. You got a Colin Simmons who he gets to pretty much do free reign, whatever he wants to do, comes crashing down to try to tackle McCray, and that leaves Bowens wide open in the flat. What a critical, great call at a point in time in the game where basically that is where we drug them out to deep water, where it just become 14-10 with about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And I do not believe that Texas, I think it was over 14 minutes before Texas touched the ball again in that situation, converting 2 critical 4th down plays, getting the touchdown, getting the onside kick, which was massively huge as well, and then turning those into points to basically steal a possession from Texas. And by the time they got the ball back, it's 28-10, and they're sitting there looking around with their hands up in the air. I find this funny as well, Scott. I wanted to bring this up because I have add a little humor to this right here.
We want Georgia. We want Georgia. We want Georgia. We want Georgia.
Well, they got all they wanted, brother, because since that actual video has been posted, they are now 0-3 against Georgia. This was back when they were feeling very good about themselves in the Big 12 and making it to the playoffs and making the run that they did. But, I look at it now and obviously laugh at that video because they really did not know what they were asking for when they came over to the SEC. That Big 12 is just soft, just to be quite frank with you, soft as shit. And, the way I look at it, you come over here and you got more people, I promise you, and I know, Scott, you've seen it as well on your Twitter feeds, the amount of excuses of the refereeing in this game. If I tried to get every bookmark that I created, I was going to actually I could have made a book. And I really wanted to put that out there to show you all of those different excuse makers. I'm telling you guys, it is not that way. The way it's set up is that you're going to have holds. Guess what? We got held too. Guess what? There was a lot of hand fighting going on in the defensive secondary to your offensive receivers. If you want to go nitpick one play for you think where you got held for a split second, well, let's go ahead and go to the other side and look at it the same way. Are there some blatant ones that probably could have been called? Sure, but you're in the SEC now, Texas. Just because you got an SEC logo beside your brand name now does not mean that you just get to come out there and show up and be able to do what you're supposed to do. The level of physicality has got to meet the brand, and that's something to me that's not being met, and they thought they had it when they lined down against us in Sanford Stadium on Saturday, and I'm going to tell you what, they were definitely superseded by more physicality from the University of Georgia. By the time it got into the third quarter and when all that started happening, where we had that massive transition change after sort of a null set there, but it seemed like in the middle eight and midway through the third quarter, all of a sudden it started clicking, started working. And, the execution of obviously increased. And before Sark and staff knew it, they were down again 28-10. I want to show this question here. How do you feel about the defense after CJ went out? Go ahead, Scott, and run with that question right there.
I think they stepped up in a massive way. I mean, CJ's the quarterback of the defense. He's not only that, he's a true leader. He's organic as a leader, something that we missed last year because not enough people were able to be genuinely vocal, like the people in positions to be a leader, I don't believe stepped up the way they needed to do. CJ goes out. Hopefully, we'll knock on wood that it's the best news of the bad news you can get. Cole, Wilson, Williams have all been preparing for this moment, and it truly has to be next man up. And there's only a few teams that can do that and afford to do that. Not only being talent rich and being really saturated with high level players, but really being saturated with true football players. And I thought the relentless aggression never stopped. I thought that they did such a good job on the run fits. I mean, the rushing total for Texas, I believe, in 3 games is under 90 yards.
Yes, 83 yards.
And just to go back to the excuse making, what amazes me is we all agree the SEC officiating has to be fixed. There's too much influence on such a massive product that brings in so much money, so much entertainment, something that we love, and they deserve the best officiating. All of a sudden, the officials are on Georgia's side week after week after week. And it really makes me wonder if we're just really that rich that we're able to pay them off every week. If not, then, I'm kind of confused on what's going on. But Texas has to have some sort of excuse because on paper, this game shouldn't have been just to run them out of the building. It should have been really, really tight. It should have been what Vegas said and what a lot of people thought. I thought surely Texas coming off the bye week, as healthy as they've been all year, is going to come up, seek redemption because they got a little hot against Oklahoma. That's a good win now looking on the season, and they needed something to keep them alive for the playoff bid. That's likely dead and gone now. But when you come into Athens, you have to have this specific mentality of meeting the relentless aggression with relentless aggression. And I don't think Texas has that as a team right now. I think it's a lot of talented guys that, like Kirby said, physicality doesn't supersede the check. And I hate to say it that way, but it's just it's becoming more and more apparent because as Sarkisian's played other elite rosters, he has one win among all of them, and that was in 23. And not to give Bama too many excuses. I mean, Milroe wasn't really even solidified as a quarterback. I mean, a good example, they go South Florida, and they're looking at tie at that point. So Texas has got two decisions to make here. Are you really about it? Are you talking about it? And two, how are you going to find a way to win these big games? Because you continue to lose them, it's really going to be a detriment to you in the recruiting season because at some point players are going to figure out, hey, look, it would be great to get that initial money. But Georgia is absolutely mollywhopping them. They're putting people out in the NFL that are continuing to be great football players. Not that Texas isn't, but it's, man, I sure would like to win while I'm playing in college and get better. And really, I think the CJ injury kind of exemplifies what makes Georgia special on defense. Super, super young, but the next man can step up. And so, additional to that, I believe it was Brent Rollins who had a great little still shot of Mississippi State. I'm sure there's going to be a few in this game where you could say, man, there's 3 junior and seniors on the field, and the rest of them are just young guys.
Yep.
Those young guys are absolutely eating people. And just to emphasize how impressive this is, understand an 18-year-old who last year was going to prom or was at homecoming on a high school football field is going against a grown man across from them that's bigger than them, that's played longer, that's been in a strength conditioning program, and they're just whipping them. I mean, Griffin is just going to be something special. I think I can feel very, open to say that I could bet a lot of money that he's going to be a special type of player. But those other young guys, Walker coming out of nowhere, and I mean, he doesn't look that big, but just whipping a man in front of him who can't kick step to save his life fast enough. And the little things I look at as a fan, right, during a game, how fast does a player get up? How do they react after the hit? How do they react in the intermediate between plays? And you could tell that every Texas player was truly shocked about how hard and how physical Georgia was playing throughout the entire game. And those drops, those little miscues are a part of that. When you get a few bumps and bruises, things get really, really hard and you start forgetting the fundamentals. Well, I think that's what makes Georgia so dangerous here in the air under Kirby is they're not going to drop the fundamentals just because they're tired.
Right.
So you're going to get better because they stick to them.
You look at it too, this is not something that's just happened too, though, Scott. What I like to see is that we have improved weekly. And, a lot of people say, how do you think we're improving? It's because, well, first off, I watch film, damn it. And I see from week to week, I see a kid that I'm saying like, oh, I wish he would have done this. I wish he would have done that. And then the next week I see him do it. And then I see some that I watch the same mistakes happen every week. And you and I have talked about that. People like Ja'Cory Thomas that we have really been kind of down on, even though we'd love to see him go out there and ball out. I mean, you see on film week in and week out. Now, we don't get to see him obviously in practice every day. That's seen by Coach T-Rob, Coach Dante Williams, Coach Schumann, Coach Smart. And, that's all part of it. But when I get the sample size of every night, 60 minutes, and I get him on tape and I get 35 to 55 reps that I can watch and evaluate, especially when he's being put pressure on, and I can say consistently that he's not getting the job done, then by God, that's the way I feel like it probably is. Unless he is just a massively good practice guy, but yet can't translate it to the game, that's also got to be evaluated as well by your coaching staff. So what we're seeing in DeMello Jones, Zayden Walker, Chris Jones, Justin Williams, Joseph Jonah Ajonye, Elijah Griffin, those guys have grown up over 7 to 8 ball games because they're getting reps, they're getting better. That's the reason why you see Zayden Walker out right now, because of the fact of what he's doing on the practice and scout. I remember back when Ladd McConkey started getting all of his reps. It was because of what he was doing on the scout team. He was torching people on the first offense, and that led him to start getting reps in real games. That's why we're seeing, just like a Chris Cole last year, when we saw him kind of erupt in the Texas ball game in Austin last year. It's the same reason why we're seeing Zayden Walker and people like Elijah Griffin that are getting hell of a lot more reps than what they were getting at the beginning of the year, and DeMello Jones for that matter as well, because they're showing that ability in practice and translating that over in game. And that's something that's very specific to understand from a coach's perspective to your players. I think it's so important and so critical because they did not match to start with Georgia's physicality. They wanted to. They lined down. They looked good in their pads. But by God, they were not ready for the physicality that was brought to them. And like you said, Scott, somehow, some way, that's something that's got to be found that's not going to be found with a dollar bill. I want you to listen to this real quick. This is today's Monday presser with Steve Sarkisian in Austin.
a lot of the things I felt like I saw to be true in the game felt like they held true when I watched the tape. You look at the end of the third quarter, and it's 14-10. You're looking at about a really very even ball game, from a yardage standpoint, third down conversions. Both teams had a turnover. It was a very kind of hard fought game. It's exactly what we thought it would be. Unfortunately, they have the drive to score, and on that drive, they had the 2 fourth down conversions, which, credit to them for taking the risk for trying to convert those. It's unfortunate we didn't execute on the first 4th and 1, and it's unfortunate we jumped off sides on the second one. That's on us. We've got to be better in those special situations in the game. It's exactly what we told the team today. And then coming right out of it, they hit us with the surprise onside kick. And so when you really look at the gravity of from 14-10 to 35-10, they scored 21 points. We ran 3 plays on offense. And so, there's a lot of ways to look at the game and what happened and what we could have done differently and or better. But if you really just take a snapshot of the game, that's when it got away from us. And so, like I said, credit to Georgia. They played a heck of a game. They took their risk at opportune times and made their plays, and we didn't.
Scott, your reaction to that right there, what you think about it?
I'd lead in and say, Coach, yardage is great and all, but we watched a different football game. I mean, Georgia controlled it most of the way. An interception on a short field had Texas feel like they got in it. And again, that 4th and 1 was really critical. I'm not saying that wasn't, a tight moment in the game. But, Coach, you were 132nd or in the 120s in the most penalized team. You go into Athens, the lack of discipline continues to show. You get a bunch of penalties that are critical. You get a bunch of drops. I think you have to be semi-positive as a coach. I get you can't come out and just say, hey, we got absolutely mollywopped in the physicality of the game. We didn't do this right, didn't do that right. You can't harp on the negatives. But at the same time, you got to say, look, the bottom of the boat fell out in the 4th quarter, and we got to figure out how to fix that. And it's starting to point at, hey, what can we do better and what didn't we do in the game? And I think one of the players came out, and I think it perfectly exemplified kind of the mentality shift that Texas has had is, oh, well, this is not big, bad Georgia. I felt like. And that's great that you feel that way. I mean, any player shouldn't feel like, oh, I'm just not good enough to be on the field. But you got to be honest at some point and say, look, they punched us in the mouth. We kept getting hit. We tried to trade blows, and we just couldn't do it. And not only that, Coach, getting surprised by certain things. Again, that's not a situation where you think, oh, onside kick's coming. To me, it showed the lack of preparation, because the story with Cash Jones and that onside kick, guys, like that's been done hundreds of times. So that build up to opportunity, that's what makes Georgia so dangerous, is understanding if they do something on the field, it's rarely, oh, well, we only practiced this 2 or 3 times. This is like hundreds of reps over and over and over again. And
Yes.
I just don't think Texas does that nearly to the degree they should, especially with how much they invest in the football program, how much talent they say they have. In addition to that, too, they practice 2 times in the bye week. That's according to Texas and the people around that program. And I get it. You want to be healthy. But little things like that, I'd be very, very careful with if I was a coach. Again, I'm not getting paid millions of dollars, obviously, because I'm not a high-end head coach like Steve Sarkisian is. But don't you think that that's kind of a game you want to take advantage of every single rep? I mean, if you want to go shells, if you want to go light, just have them in T-shirts and shorts and helmets. Hey, do it to it. But I think that's the real difference is Georgia mentions Bloody Tuesday for a reason. There's a reason Kirby Smart came out with the comments after the game and today. I think Kirby's being very bluntly honest with the media, which is great. That's a sign that he feels really comfortable in the success, so he can actually back up what he's saying. Because that's one of the worst things as a coach, right? You say A and it ends up being B, and you look just egg on your face. So, yeah, it was close on the scoreboard. It may have been close in certain metrics and yardage. But I think anyone watching that game was thinking, look, Georgia's firmly in control of this. Even with that great play by Anthony Hill, that interception, it felt like, okay, Georgia's about to start going on a run here again. They're not getting stonewalled over and over. It's Texas gambling right. a missed block here, just, again, due to Texas's good play. But you could see it if you were truly watching it. Look, Georgia can take over this. And I think those 2 fourth down conversions, what they did there, I'm not sure if that was the London Humphreys motion where the safety took number 1 and the corner did, and it just left them free open. But plays like that to me show, okay, look, when you're tired, when you've been getting hit all game, and you make such a big mistake like that, and they're able to capitalize on it. That's what's super impressive about Georgia. They're starting to capitalize on those errors. You got to ask yourself, well, why are they making the errors? And it's a lot to do with the physicality and mentality of the team just not being able to match Georgia.
Right. And, to be mentally prepared is just as much as being physically prepared. And that's what you don't have in a good football team that just can't get over the hump. And what we actually probably saw a lot more back during the Mark Richt times where we had the talent on the field, but it seemed like for some odd reason we couldn't get over the hump with the mental errors, where it was too many penalties, having the costly penalty, it cost you a big play, those kinds of things. And granted, those things have happened to us during the Kirby Smart era as well. But it seems to me we are maximizing more things because you can't talk about Gunner Stockton in the offense. And of course, when the defense stood up against Ole Miss, needing those plays during the late in the game when they made the fourth quarter rally against Ole Miss. But, not as much talked about thinking about how we came back against Tennessee too, Scott. You think about it, we were 4th and 6 on the positive 35 and threw a gorgeous football down into a basket to London Humphreys for the touchdown. And then obviously had the field goal that was missed that took it into the overtime situation where we end up getting the win. There's so many little things that everybody says, well, Georgia gets their way here. No, Georgia gets their way because they have mentally prepared to take on that. And what's even better as a coach is that you get to see them experience that in real time, in real games, in big time situations. So just like when they did finally get it back to 14-10 off the short field that they got, I really never, I knew immediately, I'm like, okay, they probably say they started nodding their head on the sideline. Okay, let's get it. We got to go get it, take care of business. And I'll be damned if they don't go right down the field and score and then turn around and get the onside kick. I know that they wasn't planning on going for it on the 2nd, 4th down. But again, how many times have they worked on the hard count and Drew Bobo waiting for somebody to jump? And the minute somebody jumps in the neutral zone, you snap it. Now, we should have gotten a pass interference call on that as well. But, I'm not going to sit there and complain about that because that's not what you do now. I remember so many people that typically want to fan about the referees and how they change the dimensions of the game. If you really want to talk to us, Texas fans, about a game, let's go back to the 2023 SEC championship game where a ball hits the ground with Isaiah Bond. I don't want to sit there and listen to that mentality of, being screwed out of a play that changes the whole dynamics of the game. It sucked knowing that ball hit the ground and they never reviewed it. But we have to live on from that. You have to grow from that and move on. And that's something that, unfortunately, when you're in this big time situation, you have 4 quarters to prove it. And unfortunately, we're talking about post-game, all of these woulda, shoulda, couldas when it should have taken place in the actual game because you have your team prepared, ready to play, and they got drug out to deep waters and they drowned them. And that's the reason why you listen to Sark, you listen to all these guys post-conference, you're getting exactly what you're saying, Scott.
And Coach, one thing I really want to emphasize that you're talking about, even this year, obviously your job as a coach is to mitigate errors and to kill those negative tendencies, nip it in the bud. Texas will play 3 really good quarters, but just like the Vanderbilt game and all these and Mississippi State, you see them surge and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. And that to me is just a picture perfect situation of what you did. I mean, this was a perfect scenario for you minus one thing. You had to go to Athens. And so everything's set up for you to succeed. You just didn't do it. And you didn't do it in a big way. And like you're saying, you build opportunities through constantly pursuing them. They're obviously not going to come every time, but the only way you can run through the door is if you're already running. And I just think that Texas is so far behind in that. I think there's a lot of, well, it's not as bad as you think. Well, it's not this. Well, it's not that. When really it needs to be a look in the mirror moment of, look, if we're going to be the Texas that the media sells us to be, a lot's going to have to change. Bloody Tuesdays are going to have to start creeping in. We're going to have to start figuring out how teams like Georgia just can't bully us in the biggest game of the season minus Ohio State. And that's something that Sarkisian is really going to just have to accept is, hey, coach, at this point, you have tendencies. Teams that have equal rosters do you beat you. Teams that can drag you into deep water or really physical, just as talented, can beat you. Georgia can really beat you because they pursue that physicality as their primary way to really test another team. And unfortunately for Texas, they've just failed spectacularly twice in the regular season now.
Yes. And something I would always do as a coach, if I knew we were going into a team that I felt was going to be out athleted in, I always tried to challenge my guys because I would always try to practice my guys to be the toughest guys on the field. I would always say match their physicality, because a lot of times when you have elite teams that have a lot of skill, they not necessarily are going to be the most physical team that you deal with. So if you out physical them, you beat them down, all of a sudden that mental preparation starts going down. You start having mental errors, and all of a sudden a team that should be beating you by 2 or 3 touchdowns is not. I think Texas is not getting to that point. They have the brand, they have the logo, they have the high-profile offensive coordinator who really needs to be a head coach instead of being the play caller, because I think that's screwing up his whole process of trying to be the head coach on the sideline, to make those management issues, those micromanagement issues that you need to take care of instead of worrying about making the play call for the next down and distance. That's something that's got to be done as well. I wanted to say, since we are talking about physicality, we have got to mention this part of the presser of Coach Smart post game right after in the press room. I want you to listen to this small blurb. Most of you have probably heard it, but I want your reflection on this after this, Scott.
Points in the fourth quarter. What did you think about how the offense finished this game, especially after a third quarter where it was hard to sustain on the drive?
Yeah, it's the approach we take. We're gonna dominate and try to win the fourth quarter. It's what we do in practice. It's what we do in the off season. It's what we build our core culture around, is being the more physical team. And you have to recruit physical players, and they have to buy into that process. I don't know that a lot of these kids nowadays, they want to check. They don't want physicality. And if you have the check and no physicality, you end up with nothing. So we're not just getting checks at our place. We're hitting people.
Let me say something real quick before you interject on this. First off, kudos to Coach Smart for not giving a piss about being politically correct about today's time and today's players. This is a way for him to get his word across. He does such a great job of actually saying what needs to be said in today's time, in today's world of college athletics. And I really love that. Is it probably a rib punch to Sark? Sure it is. I'm sure it is. But still, though, he's saying what needs to be said because it's the damn truth. And I really like the fact that he actually puts that out there in a way that says, I don't care what the world tells me I should be doing with my team. I'm going to do it the right way. And even if people disagree on the outside looking in from a helicopter's view, by God, we're getting results in this process if you'll be patient with it. But unfortunately, it's not sexy, Coach. It's not the way that everybody else is doing it, Coach. Well, to me, the right way that's being done is what we're bringing and putting on the stage each Saturday. That product that we're building is the byproduct of hard work in the offseason, going through growing pains, letting kids growing up, getting kids healthy, and everybody beginning to show their abilities, their ceilings that they have as the year progresses. And I'm telling you, what Chris Fowler said at the beginning of the show that we showed you guys is true, because whoever's lining up against Georgia does not want to see that Georgia logo in their bracket holder, because we are, as a group, as a fandom, as just everything that goes along with being a UGA fan and being excited about your team, they're getting hot. And I think everybody around you would probably see that as a process as well and agree with that. What do you think, Scott?
When I said this was a statement game, and we've had 2 of those back to back, I think 2 people need to take this into account, that Kirby makes sure the scoreboard reflects it. And 2, Kirby's not going to pull any punches. Recruiting's a dirty game. You got to put proof in concept if you're going to sell it to kids, because these kids are getting more representation. They're getting more driven by the financial incentive at schools. And I think Kirby really wants to balance that in the best way of, look, the NIL check's never going to match the NFL check. We know that. Let's work on that presumption. I think you're an NFL football player, so if you come here, I'm going to make you one. I'm going to make sure you're one, because you have that built into you. Well, it takes a lot to draw it out of a player. You got to put in the hard work, and I think Kirby builds off of that, and I think that statement perfectly reflects it. I mean, again, he made a statement today in his Monday presser that was just absolutely outstanding of, well, what do you want to do with players that don't really want to match that physicality Monday through Friday? And he says, hey, look, we schedule. We want to play those teams. And he's just being bluntly honest. He's trying to get that message across in black and white to make it clear as crystal for people of, look, this is what we're seeing more often than not, and that helps us thrive. And that's really how Kirby looks at it. Guys, he takes this personally. It is so rare to have a head coach that's not only invested mentally into your alumni and your university, but truly just in his heart and his soul is a diehard dog that will do anything to win and promote the university's best attributes. And one of those is physicality. It's just being absolutely mean, taking people to the ground every single chance you get, and making sure that your statement is not after the game's played, like the Texas players walking off the field. It was made between the whistles. And that's the only way that you can really get the message across is doing the walk to walk. Well, you got to talk the talk too. And I think Kirby's following that walk with the talk, which is the best way to do it.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Scott, because I wanted to play this clip real quick. This is what Kirby mentioned in his presser today. For those of you who are watching by video right now or live, by the way, thank you for being on the live. We appreciate you watching with us as always. We are Head on a Swivel. My name's Coach Hayes. This is Scott Green. Actually, he's in this direction. And we are going to be on here on a weekly show. We're going to start, like I said, on Saturday nights doing our rapid reaction after game. Monday, like we're doing tonight, just doing our basically now a chance to review and look at game tape and understand that process. Those of you who want to watch the X's and O part, that will be a part of my Patreon that I'll be moving on this week as well. For those of you who are really interested in seeing the breakdowns of the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And on Thursday nights, we'll have our regular show that previews the next week game. So we appreciate you being with us tonight. Scott mentioned something about Coach Smart being basically very blunt about what he believes in, but because it's the truth, there's a lot of people that think they want to get this for some kind of bulletin board material as sort of a flex, but realistically, he is backing this up. This is not something that he's just saying on a whim, saying we hope we can, we wish we can. He's doing it. So again, I wanted to show you this real quick. This is what Scott just mentioned in this reflection of what Coach Smart said. This is today's presser.
Kirby, how do you balance? You talked about after the game, guys wanting to check. You don't have guys that just want to check. You have guys that want to play physical. If you have really hard physical practices, how do you balance keeping kids from saying, this is just too much, I'm ready to hit the portal, I'll go somewhere else where it's easier? But you still have to make them physical.
Sorry.
Kirby, how do you balance? You talked about after the game, guys wanting to check. You don't have guys that just want to check. You have guys that want to play physical. If you have really hard physical practices, how do you balance keeping kids from saying, this is just too much, I'm ready to hit the portal, I'll go somewhere else where it's easier? But you still have to make them physical, so you have to kind of put them through that grind. How do you balance it?
We schedule them. The ones that want to leave, we schedule them. We try to get them on the schedule because when they want to leave because they're not physical, that means they're probably going to a place that's not physical. We like those places. We like to play them. We prefer them, actually, if you can get them on the schedule. So it's one of those deals that you don't run from hard in life. You run from hard in life, you'll find more hard.
Dude, that's my head coach. And as a coach, seeing the way you have kids play for you and seeing it at the collegiate level that he basically calls out your soft-ass kids that want to go somewhere else because they can't handle it. There's a way of you doing that in a way that sounds almost like he's being nice. That's a nice way of him saying, you go somewhere else because you're too soft to play for us, because you don't match the standard of what we want to have here. So wherever you do go, I hope that I can schedule that team, because if that's where you're going, that means you're definitely not going to be matching the level of physicality that you're going to be facing when you come to the University of Georgia. And unfortunately, it's not made for everybody. You know that. I know that. Most of the fans who understand Coach Smart know that. I think it's really good, though, that people who are on the outside looking in from the helicopter's view, 20,000 feet, they hear that from Coach Smart's mouth, because he's not saying that to try to be funny. He has such a real unique way indirectly to call out people, but yet do it in a way where he's basically telling the truth. He's like, you want him to spit facts? By God, he's spitting the facts. And in this case scenario, he is definitely do that. What's your thoughts on that as well?
I just want to talk to the audience. So think about something that you're really, really good at in your life. You don't feel bashful or shy of just stating it, just simply fact. You're really good at it. You have the proof that you're good at it.
Oops.
Well,
excuse me.
Oh, that's all right. With that being said, that's where Georgia's at. And they've shown you time and time again, look, this isn't just like the team last year when we sold resilience. This is a team that is being physically relentless and wearing teams down. And you're seeing it again and again and again. And these young recruits now can look at the film, because it's not what did you do? It's what have you done for me lately in this game? And Kirby's able to navigate the coach speak. And every once in a while, he'll throw out just a big truth bomb at you like he's been doing these last couple of days, and it showcases. And that's what's so important, especially in this game, is I'm not selling you on words. I'm selling you on film, and I'm selling you on results. And Kirby is trying to be honest because I think he truly loves the game. And I think he's concerned about the direction that it's going in from other places. And he's just being candid with you of, look, you don't need to run away from hard work. And you also don't need to chase down things like checks and all this NIL deal, because those will come when you actually have the film, you have the performance to sell it. And when you backwards that process, that ends up hurting you, because now you're built up to something that you can't be and that you're not ready to be. And maybe eventually you even will be. But that's the thing I just love about this coach, about this university, and about this team is they build from the ground up by just being relentlessly physical while maintaining fundamentals. And like you said, Coach, that's the thing that makes it frustrating but great is you turn the film on, you see one guy make just a little bit of a mistake, but guess what? Next play, the effort's there. Everything fundamentally is there with just a little bit of mistake here, something that's got to get fixed there. And that's why Georgia's getting so much better. And it appears just sudden to people for some reason. Well, it's been there. It's just a few mistakes away. Those critical plays that Sark's trying to reference is, oh, it's close, it's this. No, Coach, that was built up through a 50 snap sample size, and 35 of those led to that sequence of you getting dunked on and 21 points in the fourth quarter. And you not addressing the clear issue that Texas almost let Vanderbilt back in the game. They struggled with Mississippi State. Kentucky drew them into deep water, and they barely survived. And that was really done on talent. And it's not a diss. It's just a matter of fact at this point. Hey, this is something who you are. Well, Georgia in the positive direction is exactly who you think they are, and they're getting better.
So well said. I was looking here at this question. Did the offense go conservative in the middle of the game, or was that just Texas giving it all they had? I don't know if you know this or not, but I think Coach Bobo really feels like he can scheme very well against Texas. It was evident out of the first and second series. He really didn't devote himself to the run as much as I really thought that we would to start with. I really thought we would lay down. But when he saw 7 and 8 in the box with the safety walking down, he's like, we're going to get them in play action right out of the gate. And sure enough, the zone pull for the long run was the only actual run play in that first series before we hit Noah Thomas for the touchdown. A lot of people don't realize on that first series, too, where we try to isolate Chauncey Bowens out of the backfield off the play action. It looks like we're running gap scheme. Chauncey goes off the backside, ends up being covered very well. Noah Thomas is actually wide open on that play as well. I've actually got that as part of my breakdown too. And, he ends up scoring about 2 plays later. But it just goes to show Zachariah Branch and a lot of pre-snap candy motion, and that pulls a safety over, and now Noah's one-on-one on the backside. I know they have to see that on film. I wouldn't doubt it if they don't come back to that and probably pull Chauncey off to an option route to hold the corner, and now you've got one-on-one on the backside, and you had the guy beat. I look at all the different things that come along with the offensive side of the ball. I really think he wanted to devote himself back to the run. So being a very predominant run guy, he's got a very good run scheme offense. That's something that he prides himself on, something I would pride myself on as an offensive coach too, because if you can't run the damn football, you can't throw it. You can't have the play action RPO game that we're seeing, the rollout game that we're seeing from Gunnar Stockton, and how that symmetry is working now if you don't have a quality run game. Nate Frazier running like a beast again. I think Chauncey complements him very well. Lord willing, Chauncey's going to be back soon. I know he's got a small nagging injury of some sort. I'm not sure what it is. But you look at all those things that come along with it. But my mentality when I look at what he's doing offensively is I think he tried to devote himself back to a run game where they're still got 7 and 8 in the box. And he was basically, you know what? I don't give a crap if they got 7 or 8 in the box. Let's see if we can run it against them. And I think that's what he was trying to do. I think they wanted to lean on him a little bit. He decided to be a little bit more conservative with more run, and then try to throw it out of those situations, and was just kind of toying with Texas, honestly, because Texas was doing nothing really on the offensive side of the ball. So we felt pretty good there. As an offensive coordinator, you want to get a feel for things because you want to set plays up for later. And that's what ended up happening based off those couple of series where we saw it kind of go null midway through the middle 8, and then of course into the third quarter until Texas got the short field on the interception and scored. And then it was just like, we flipped the switch and said, okay, let's get back into what we do well and let's figure it out. And sure enough, they did a really good job of executing that. I had another question up here that I wanted Scott I wanted you to answer this one. Out of the playoff teams right now, we know obviously we're going to have a new playoff committee number for 1 to 25. Obviously, the top 12 are going to be announced tomorrow night on the bracket, and we obviously know Georgia's probably going to move up in that situation. We would think. Out of the playoff teams, it must be a follower of you there, Scott, but got the same name as you do. Out of the playoffs teams, who would be favored to actually beat the Dawgs right now? What do you think?
Obviously, I think Ohio State would have the favor. I really don't think Indiana would. I think Indy deserves their spot. I think they've earned it. But when you see them play comparable talent, you kind of see that their lines of scrimmage are getting reset. Now they're super talented on the outside. I think Mendoza is absolutely outstanding. He's doing a great job. But I think these Vegas odds setters, their board setters, they're absolutely looking at lines of scrimmage and physicality, even though they can't metric it. Honestly, Ohio State's the only one that I would feel comfortable putting $100 on today, saying, look, they would be favored neutral site. A&M would be close. I would think it would be like a pick 'em. Again, I'm not a really, really good bettor, but I would say the odds would be set in that tight window.
Yeah.
Just because A&M's really explosive. They have the ability to really hurt you. But again, they kind of toyed with their food last week, and you saw how the physicality got to them early on when they weren't really ready to take that. And again, this is not a diss to A&M, but I think this is a perfect example of kind of how this season goes. And I'm even going to go back to that Mike Bobo question. That was a good question. I had it during the game myself. They're playing the bottom half of the schedule. Now, you can only play who you play, but there's not a lot of teams that can slow set you up for a real knockout quarter or a set of series or a play script that they build up late for the game. I think you're absolutely right, Coach. I think Mike Bobo likes to absolutely plug away at something and build those tendencies in game, have the defense set up or say, oh, they're doing this. Oh, look, it's 12 personnel. He's set here. He motions here. Oh, okay. That motion gives me tendency for this.
Yep.
It's already been hard because we've all agreed. Look, Mike Bobo to me went from a B-plus coordinator, a lot not on his fault last year, to an A-plus coordinator who's just hitting you from every ways. And look, that's a testament to the players executing. It's not easy to do that. But those tendencies get set up, and then you absolutely turn it on its head, and all of a sudden that tendency becomes something totally different, and you're caught flat-footed. Like you said, a lot of that pre-snap motion, making it really hard on the defense. Yeah, you're having to showcase what coverage they're in. They're going to have to show who's who and where they're going and likely what the responsibilities are. Georgia's one of the very few teams, I would say there's maybe 3 that I could say can set you up for a long period of time in a game, not 1 or 2 plays, 1 or 2 series, because they feel confident and they're standing in the game. That makes them really, really dangerous when they execute at a high level, because you saw how effortless the fourth quarter looked once the dam broke.
Yeah.
I mean, those 2 conversions absolutely set it up where Texas is like, oh, man, okay, we were at 14-10. Now we're not. Oh, there it is, touchdown. Okay, let's try to reset. And the thing is, they get internal with it. So I guarantee you the Texas players are like, hey, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do that. The onside kick surprised them because they weren't even in that mentality of expect anything. Be safe. Be really fundamentally sound. It was more of, okay, reset, reset, reset. You can't do that. You got to think about yourself in that moment. But going back to the betting odds, honestly, Ohio State's the only one. And look, Vegas likes them for a good reason. But, guys, again, I'm earnestly saying this. Ohio State, A&M have not been tested, and I think even Ohio State and A&M fans would say this, have not been tested nearly to the degree Georgia has been tested.
Mm-hmm.
They're not nearly as young. Like, these are supposed to be pop-out years. I mean, Ohio State's spending to do that. They had a lot of retention, and this doesn't take anything away from Julian. It's just, hey, look, we did lose all that crop of guys, but we reloaded in certain areas that Georgia unfortunately lost 1 or 2 key pieces and had to reset. Well, that youth has now flipped into an advantage because, 1, you have less film, and 2, they're just so darn athletic. And you're setting them up for success of, hey, man, I can trust you to do this. And now that I can trust you, you get to play more. And now that you get to play more, you get more experience. And you guys see how that cycle just builds and builds and builds. And that's the same thing with the offense, guys. Like, those young guys on the right guard, right tackle, they're getting a lot better about setting their feet. The delayed blitz isn't eating them as much. They're able to pass off. There was a great play, defensive end actually set a fake, trying to establish his hands and get the offensive tackle to kind of overextend. Nope. Green just reset his hands, reset him, gave Gunner plenty of time. And see, all this stuff, and that's why I think your film study is so great, Coach. And I think it makes you enjoy the game more because you understand it more. But the thing with all that setup is He truly is. Bobo is truly playing checkers or playing chess against a lot of people playing checkers. And I think that's something we got to start really appreciating. And at the time, he may be going, "Oh man, I grab my hat, throw on the ground. What are we doing?" Da, 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 da. Well, just trust the process and understand at any point in time, Georgia can put that accelerator right to the floor and handle business.
Yes, and it's really important to understand, when you look at the totality of why I stay on an even keel when I hear those hyperboles about, you know, Coach Bobo, or you hear them about Coach Searles, you hear them about Coach Schumann at the beginning of the year because defensively we can't stop anybody. Guys, it doesn't happen overnight where all of a sudden you just plug in all these 5-star kids, 4-star kids, even 3-star kids everywhere. And just because they have the capability of doing a good job does not mean they're going to execute to a good job. You have to give them game reps, meaningful reps against high SEC caliber play to see them function and get game film on them to get them better, because that's the improvement you want to see. Just like we're seeing right now with Zion Branch. Right now, Zion Branch and Ja'Cory Thomas equaled snaps in this last game against Texas. I think Ja'Cory had 36, Zion Branch had 35. You don't think there was a reason for that? There is a reason for that. T-Rob is seeing, okay, I've got half and half, 50 and 50, what we're going to get right here. Some of it could be situational, but I'm almost betting you money that he wanted to see equal reps from both sides and who's going to produce the better sample size. That's how you see where is going to be your starting 11, where you need your rotators to be. There's no doubt up front Elijah Griffin is showing up and beginning to show out now. He's doing a lot of good things on the defensive line. He's beginning to be that one that's beginning to, like I said, just sort of peak at the right time. Not only as a freshman that's out there doing his job, but also beginning to get off one-on-ones. I'm noticing, like you mentioned a while ago, on the offensive line, when I'm watching X stunts, when you call out, say, for example, and you've got the Mike identification to the right side of Roger call, and you know your backside guard and tackle are on an island. There's so many times where you get the delayed X stunt all the time, and where your guard chases the guy running into the tackle and the X stunt comes around and he's free to the quarterback. At the beginning of the year, that was getting free, and we were seeing it like the dam being opened. But now all of a sudden they're passing that off. It's almost like watching it in slow motion. He's working that X stunt. Bam, here he comes. Boom. And they lock down, and you got that nice umbrella pocket that you want to see. I think, you look at his intercept. You go back to Gunnar Stockton right now. I wanted to finish with this as our last segment because we're at an hour right now. And we do appreciate all of those of you who are in the chat. Got a huge amount of people watching right now. Got a lot of questions in the chat as well. I want to make sure you hear a lot of these things because, when you look at, the 3 interceptions that Gunnar has thrown, one of them was a deflected pass off Noah Thomas's hands in the Florida game. So theoretically, 2 actual, intentional interceptions that happen. I sit there and look at his QBR rating against Power 4 teams. You look at his QBR rating inside the red zone. If you look at his QBR in the fourth quarter alone, he is excelling at above, shoulders and feet and knees and toes and everything else above everybody else right now. No matter the Mendozas of the world, no matter the gentleman that's out there in Oregon. Why am I losing his name right now? The quarterback for Oregon. I know he had big hopes on his
It's more coach. Yeah.
Yes. And he's not carrying it through. We had Nussmeier, Lenora Sellers, we were thinking we're going to excel. Right now, everybody's saying that the Heisman is wide open. I know it's almost laughable now, right? That's the reason why preseason talk is just crazy. But I sit there and look at all of these different gentlemen, and everybody's saying, who's the real Heisman contender? How in the world can you not be thinking that Gunnar Stockton is at least in the talk now about going to New York for the Heisman Trophy? I guarantee Gunnar don't care. I really think if you were to ask him right now, he'd say, I don't care. I just want to beat Charlotte next week. That would be his answer. And honestly, I think it'd be the damn truth. But the thing is, though, why can we not be talking about what this kid is doing right now, where his QBR rating is top in the nation, top in the SEC? He is definitely excelling in the second half, third and fourth quarter. His efficiency is off the chart with 3 interceptions, really one that shouldn't have been his, and not be talking about him for the Heisman hope. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that before we close up shop for this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a really big metric that a lot of professional people go through. It's called FEI. It's a fancy way of saying efficiency in meaningful time against meaningful opponents. Guess who's the most efficient offense and has been now for 4 of the weeks that we've played? That's Georgia. And that efficiency with the new clock rules is so brutal to play, and it makes it such a headache, and it makes it a real problem and almost an impossibility to stop because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
Guys, to do that, you have to have a quarterback that executes at a high level. If you don't believe me, look at last week. Bama realistically outplayed Oklahoma in a lot of aspects, but those turnovers, which is a major deficiency in terms of an efficiency offense,
Yep.
because you're given a free possession and you're taking away yours at the same time, you see how easy that can flip. And you can play a better game all but 5 plays and lose. Well, when you're an efficiency-based offense like that, you got to have someone like Gunnar Stockton who simply doesn't care about everything else than there is to care about. He only worries about the thing in front of him, the play to be made, and he's getting better. And one of the best things I can tell you, and I knew that Gunnar was going to be special, is you see the subtle changes of things he is working on. And these are hundreds of reps after practice, conversations with receivers. I mean, Colby Young, I wish him the best, but we know his season's over. Afterwards, Gunnar and Noah are working after practice, trying to get one-on-one to make sure they're on the same page. Gunnar's clearly got better at layering the football. He's got more control of the offense. He's recognizing things more. He's making audible calls when it's a really tight game. It's because he's not thinking about all those extracurriculars. He's thinking about, what do I need to do to set my team up for success? And that's so rare in today's game. Guys, there's only 2 or 3 other quarterbacks that are even close to what Gunnar Stockton's doing. And what makes it even more brutal to play is it's when you're most tired, when you're the most beat up, that's when he plays his best football.
Mhm.
And guys, a lot of people, and including, I'm sure some of the audience and myself even, there's been those real moments where you have a ton of anxiety. Gunnar's just cool, calm, and collected. It's because he's been that way the entire time. And to be a gamer like that, I've only seen 2 quarterbacks in my long tenure of being a fan, and that was Stetson Bennett and Gunnar Stockton. They're not the exact same player. I'm not saying they are. But when it comes down to it and a got to have it play, those are the only 2 quarterbacks I genuinely think of, are the first names in my mind where I say, look, I got to have it, and I know they're going to do everything they can to give it to me. Those are the 2 guys I'm picking. And guys, he's only going to continue to get better. That's the thing you got to hold back on is, look, he's likely to come back. I'll knock on wood for that. But if he doesn't, honestly, God bless him. He's only going to pursue greatness more and more and more. And the Heisman stuff, I'm going to give a little secret to it and end it on this. So Coach Hayes could probably school me in 99% of football. And I could probably school all the Heisman voters in 99% of football. If that gives you an idea of what the voters are. It's the same with the AP voters. The AP voters don't even have to watch every game. In fact, a lot of them submit their votes before all the games are played.
Yep.
And the Heisman voters are doing the same thing. They have a window of time to submit their vote, and they can do it before the conference championship game. So just ask yourself, look, do I trust a person who's going to vote someone that doesn't know the difference between a standard post, a skinny post? If I said, hey, I'm going to run this drag concept or flood here, they would absolutely look at you like, well, why are you flooding your house? Like, these are people that are old school media that want to support their own narratives. And you see how that perpetual cycle is. And going back to the preseason, I think that's a perfect example. DJ Lagway and Arch Manning were locks at 1 and 2. You couldn't convince a soul before the season that, look, hey, there's some things that are concerning here. Like, hey, Arch Manning's fundamentals are good, but he played 2 mid-majors. I'm not going to, sell him as something he's not yet. He may be, still yet to be seen. But DJ Lagway, massive injuries. His fundamentals aren't that great. What about this? What about, oh, but he's talented. Oh, but he's 5-star. Oh, but he played Georgia close. Well, guys, at the time, he played Georgia close for a half. Yeah. He was 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1-to-1. You don't think he was going to continue doing that? All of a sudden, he figures it out in that game. And so it's little things like that where the media just bypasses all the negative, all the positive. And guys like Gunnar, and I'll even say for Ty Simpson, even though I hate mentioning him, they're the same thing. They don't get the praise they deserve. And they just sit there and chip away, chip away, chip away. And you see how excellent they are. But for some reason, since it's efficiency-based, since it's not this, oh, they're going out and empty every 5-6 snaps. I'm like you, Coach. I would rather have this offense 99% of the time over like a veer and shoot, like a Mississippi State where it's space and pace, and it's really exciting to see. Because that's really where I know I can beat a lot of teams, is I not only can lean on you, but I genuinely have weapons across the field. So take your pick, dude.
Love it, man. I got comment here I wanted to actually elaborate on before we get off. By the way, we've got a very big amount of people watching the show tonight, which is awesome. I appreciate you guys being on the show. Scott and I are going to continue to do this. I really enjoy him being a part of the show and definitely make this more of a consistent manner for Head on a Swivel. But it says, Big Dog asked, with Charlotte this week, how would you play your starters? Keep them sharp by playing, give them rest to avoid injury, take advantage of getting your third and fourth stringers gaming experience. I'm going to say yes to all of that. You definitely want your starters to start. You want them to get out there and have some flow to the game. You want to see them execute. You want to be able to see and establish a little bit of the run game. You want to see the passing be efficient, but you want to see everything kind of executed at a high level, which you should. You never want it to be something like what happened with Massachusetts last year, where all of a sudden, or UMass as you want to call them, where we're in a shootout and we got a guy that rushes for 200 yards against our defense because we're flat as a pancake coming out against them. This is where you get better. You execute with your first and second string guys. And this does give you the chance to see a lot of reps from Ryan Puglisi. That was what was so frustrating about that year, too, because, when we wanted to finally see some second string, third string, fourth string guys, we never could do it because it always seemed like we had to keep our starters out there just to maintain the civility of, hopefully winning the ball game and obviously winning by a significant amount of points. But we never could get to that point. Who would have thought that we would be at the end of the Texas game Saturday night and Ryan Puglisi is actually taking snaps with the twos and we're actually running our offense with the twos? Roderick Robinson getting out there for the first time in forever actually had some reps in that. And I also want you to remember another name. I meant to say this a while ago. In the secondary, I want everybody who's out there listening, remember the name Rashawn Dinkins. I want you to remember that name because he is another guy that right now is high on the radar, who's getting a lot of safety reps, who's a thumper. If he can get the coverage concepts down, which I know right now it's cerebral, you're going to see this kid out there as well. And he is a thumper, my guy. So, pay attention to that name, Rashawn Dinkins, as well. But I do appreciate, we got a lot of people here at the very end, with some of the comments that I've had. I wanted to throw some up there. Big Mike watching and learning from one of the best. I tell you right now, I'm going to say this guy over here is definitely taking care of business with me because I appreciate his analytics. I appreciate his thoughts. And obviously we're very excited about what we saw Saturday. But, I'm going to be your Coach Smart here. I'm going to put you on this coach speak level. As he's always saying, humility is 1 week away. Now, everybody looks at the pressing, what we've got left. We've got a Charlotte team, which we should go out and take care of business. But that means we still got to go out and play, and you're going to hear it all week long. We're going to take care of them. I know they're getting prepared for Tech. You can't tell me they're not getting prepared for Tech. But to basically caveat on what Scott said, there's no doubt in my mind that if we go out there and execute against Charlotte and you go out and have a productive game against a Georgia Tech team, which I think is really beginning to, even though they've kind of sputtered here lately, they're still a team that feel very confident against us. And I think they are a key and lock because of Buster Faulkner's offense and what they do. And I think he knows our defense very well. He's exploited it the last 2 years. We've really struggled against that. And I think he's still going to try to take advantage with a good quarterback in Haynes King. I've always thought that for that reason because of my coaching experience and understanding what he knows, because he knows the ins and outs of what they do defensively. And I know that Coach Smart, just like he does against Alabama, is going to try to figure out a way to scheme Buster Faulkner to make him think they're going to do this when they don't do this. And so there's going to be that, cat and mouse game that's going to happen. But to basically caveat on what Scott said, I think there's no way in the world they cannot avoid talking about Heisman hopes, or at least the trip to New York for a Gunnar Stockton who is producing at the level he's producing. And if he goes out and does what he's supposed to do against Charlotte, against Georgia Tech, there's no way he's not in that conversation when it comes to the end of the 12th week and we're looking at the playoff brackets of who's going to be our starting 12. Last thing here, and we'll get off the air, Scott. Get Pug some quality reps in the backup linemen on both sides. Without a doubt, what you want to see is depth from all of this. And the line for Charlotte's 44 points. Yeah, I remember watching them against.
I was about to say.
Yeah, it's North Texas. I think I remember watching them against North Texas, and I thought to myself, my goodness, we might not even have to put our starters out there. But the formality is going to be our starters are going to be out there first. They're probably going to execute a few series. You might see a 14-0 game and see how it flows. And if we score fairly easily, they may feel confident enough to put Pugs in after the second series, because you definitely don't want injury. You definitely don't want to see your starters get hurt, but you do want to see them go out and have quality reps. They put in the time during the week. You want them to be able to go out and execute in the game. You may see a 14-point, maybe a 21-point, hopefully that's what we're looking at. and then we start seeing those young bucks get in there and get some reps, and we'll be excited to talk about them on the Rapid Reaction, because we want to see those names we have been mentioning as well. Scott, I appreciate you being with me again tonight. Guys, those of you who are in the channel, I mean, right now we've got the highest peak concurrent viewers I've ever seen for us on the Head on a Swivel show as part of Coach Hayes Huddle. And Scott, anything else you want to add before we get off the air tonight? Again, thank you guys for being here with us tonight. We appreciate you tremendously. Scott, anything you want to add?
Yeah, really, really appreciate you guys viewing in. Honestly, you guys are what makes this fun. We all want to celebrate our dogs together. Real quick on the comment there, we're already playing a lot of young guys on defense. I think that's kind of the benefit of being so young, is you're forced to do it. Fully agree on the offensive side. Look, you have 6 deep on the offensive line. You want to make it 7. You want to make it 8. You want to make sure that, the Bohulis of the world are up to Uni's up to pace and what you want, and obviously Puglisi to help him fix that turnover problem, because he is so talented. What he does is a lot of fun to watch, and I get it. People saw that arm and they thought, "Oh, that's the answer." But just like Gunner, give him time. Give him time to be the man that he can be and that you think he is today. That day is coming. It's just not today, unfortunately. But man, really, really love it. Really appreciate you guys being here. Again, I'm always going to overhype everything, because I'm just telling you guys, there's nothing better than to watch the media darling get absolutely smacked in the face by the real true king of the SEC.
Yes, sir. Oh, very well said. The facts are out. Definitely Georgia's for real. 35-10 win over the Texas Longhorns in Sanford Stadium on Saturday. As far as myself, Coach Hayes, this is Scott Green and Coach Hayes coming from you from Coach Hayes Huddle as part of our Head on a Swivel action. We appreciate all of you being in the chat tonight. Thank you for all your questions. Please make sure you hit the like button. Get those notifications about Coach Hayes Huddle as part of Head on a Swivel. Scott Green's going to be with me going forward, and I'm looking forward to many, many more shows as we move forward. Can't thank you enough for your support tonight. Take care. God bless. And as always, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.